Hi everyone, welcome to our online engagement event for the Neighbourhood Bikeways project. Tonight we'll be focusing on the Victoria Avenue corridor. My name is Natalie Bode and I'm the Senior Transportation Engineer responsible for active transportation. And I'm joined tonight by Danae Balagan, the Active Transportation Program Manager with the city. Would you like to say hi, Danae?
Hi,
Danae will be helping us behind the scenes manage all of the slides. And I'm also joined tonight by Carly Grassing, the project manager for the Neighbourhood Bikeways project.
Hi, everyone.
Please note that tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the city's Engage page for the Neighbourhood Bikeways project. And this will allow anybody who was unable to attend tonight to watch the video and let us know if they have any feedback about the design options for the corridor. We appreciate your patience as we go through the materials. Our beginning presentation will take probably about 20 minutes to get through, and then we'll open it up for discussion. I apologize in advance if you're experiencing any delays with your video stream. You may want to turn on your closed captioning to help you follow along. To ensure that the meeting runs smoothly and that we minimize technical difficulties with audio, we ask that you type your questions in the question and answer box, and I'll read them out later in the meeting. If you have joined us on a smartphone, you may also experience a delay in the video when you're typing in your comments. It kind of queues up the video stream, and then you might be out of sync with real time. So if you are unable to type your comments in the Q&A box, or if you have any other technical difficulties during the meeting, please reach out to us through one of our other engagement methods to submit your comments or questions. We have options for email, phone calls, the Engage page, or a letter, and we'll provide you some details on the contact information later in the meeting. Councillor Cynthia Block is hoping to join us this evening. She's running late. She was double booked for another meeting, so she may join us later. I know she likes to hear what you have to say about our projects. So if she joins us later, we'll give her a chance to say a few words. I will now pass it over to Carly so she can begin outlining the design options that we've developed.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. So tonight I'll be giving a bit of background information on the Neighbourhood Bikeways project, a bit of an overview on Victoria Avenue, and then we will jump into the design options. For the Neighbourhood Bikeways project, we selected 5 streets for walking and cycling improvements. These corridors are 29th Street or 31st Street West from Circle Drive to Idlewild Drive, Dudley Street from Dawes Avenue to Spadina Crescent, 3rd Avenue North from 25th Street to 2nd Avenue North, 14th Street from Saskatchewan Crescent to Cumberland Avenue, and Victoria Avenue from 8th Street to Taylor Street, which we will be discussing this evening. So the Neighbourhood Bikeways project has been completed through 5 phases of work. We started with an existing conditions review of all of the corridors back in February. Then in March, we started the first round of public engagement, where we heard your concerns and considerations for all of the project corridors. Next, corridor designs, and really started to look at what these bikeways would look like. Next, we had the second round of public engagement, where we are presenting the designs for your feedback, and that's where we are at with Victoria Avenue. And then in the winter of 2020 and 2021, we are working on the final reports. So for the designs for these corridors, we were focused on all ages and abilities, or AAA cycling facilities. And AAA cycling facilities are safe and comfortable for people walking and cycling, regardless of their age or ability. There are a range of AAA cycling facilities that exist, and for this project, we focused on 3 of them: neighborhood bikeways, protected bike lanes, and multi-use pathways. So the first facility that we looked at was neighborhood bikeways. These are shared roadways where cyclists ride in the middle of the street with vehicles, and they have low traffic volumes and speeds to be comfortable for cyclists of all ages and abilities. Traffic calming measures may be required to help reduce those traffic volumes and speeds, and on-street parking is generally not impacted with this type of facility. To be comfortable for people of all ages and abilities, traffic volumes should be less than 1,500 vehicles per day, and operating speeds should be about 30 kilometers per hour or less. The next type of facility that we looked at was protected bike lanes. And with protected bike lanes, cyclists are physically separated from vehicles and pedestrians using a variety of treatment options. This separation is required when traffic speeds and volumes cannot be reduced to meet that neighborhood bikeway threshold. And here we have one example of a protected bike lane, a race cycle track that you can find along Victoria Avenue north of 8th Street. The last facility type that we looked at was multi-use pathways. These are off-street connections that are shared by pedestrians and cyclists and other non-motorized users, and they're typically built within parks, utility corridors, greenway corridors, and other contexts where on-road facilities are not suitable or desired. Here we have one example of a multi-use pathway that can be found along River Landing. So when we look at Victoria Avenue, you'll see our study area for this project highlighted in yellow. We have 8th Street, the northern section of our study area on the right side of your screen, and Taylor Street on the left, which is the southern boundary for this project. So Saskatoon's active transportation plan identified Victoria Avenue as a AAA cycling route. There are roughly 4,000 vehicles that travel along Victoria Avenue every day between 8th Street and Taylor Street, and sidewalks exist throughout the corridor. When we look at Saskatoon's overall active transportation network, on this slide I've highlighted the 5 corridors we looked at through the Neighbourhood Bikeways project in pink. In green, we have some of our existing AAA cycling facilities. And in orange, we have identified a few of our future AAA cycling facilities. So in yellow, we have Victoria Avenue highlighted, which is what we will be looking at this evening. And as we look at where Victoria connects into our network, as we go north, it'll connect to our existing race cycle track along Victoria Avenue across the traffic bridge. And then 3rd Avenue, our future downtown bike lanes, which then connects to the portion of 3rd Avenue that we are looking at through this project. And we have also identified a future connection to connect 3rd Avenue up to the existing multi-use path along 33rd Street at the top of your screen. And south of this section of Victoria, we've also identified a future AAA facility to connect all of this down to Ruth Street. So what we heard about Victoria during the first round of engagement was that the trees along the corridor are very important, and the mature trees that exist in the boulevard next to the sidewalk are more important than the younger trees in the median. We received suggestions to continue the Victoria Avenue race cycle track south of 8th Street through this portion of Victoria, and to narrow the center median to make room for both protected bike lanes and to maintain parking. So we have developed 5 options for Victoria Avenue to discuss tonight. Because of the existing traffic volumes on Victoria, a separated protected facility is required. Traffic volumes are too high for it to be a comfortable neighborhood bikeway. So I will be going over the highlights of these design options and then discussing how we evaluated them, and then we can move into the Q&A. So we will just jump out of the presentation over to our first design option. So here we have our first option. On the top of your screen, you'll see the existing conditions of Victoria, and then on the bottom, we have our proposed design. So for option number 1, we are proposing bidirectional bike lanes on the west side of Victoria Avenue in place of the parking lane. With this option, the east side of Victoria would stay as is, and it would continue to have the parking lane. So when we look at this option from the map view, starting at 8th Street, you'll see the bidirectional bike lanes on the top side of your screen on the west side of Victoria. And this will continue as we move south towards Taylor Street. And at Buena Vista Park and 6th Street, we are recommending a raised crosswalk. So the Buena Vista Neighborhood Traffic Review found that there was some speeding issues along Victoria Avenue. And through that project, we recommended a curb extension to help reduce speeds and improve the crossing from 6th Street over to Buena Vista Park. With our design options, those curb extensions would no longer be an option, so we are considering the raised crosswalk to help with this crossing. As we continue south towards Taylor Street, you'll see there is a red line along the median. This is just indicating that the median will need to be narrowed slightly with this option to make room for the driving lane and the bidirectional bike lanes. With this option, all of those trees in the median would be maintained. And again, parking would be removed from the west side of Victoria, but it would remain on the east side of Victoria. And continues all the way to Taylor Street. Our next option, option number 2, is protected bike lanes at street level. With this option, we would remove parking from both sides of Victoria and have protected bike lanes in their place. When we move over to the map view for this one, again, starting at 8th Street, we have a nice transitions across 8th Street to this facility with our protected bike lanes on either side of Victoria, continuing south towards Taylor Street. We again see the raised crosswalk at 6th Avenue to connect to Buena Vista Park. With this option, all of the median trees would be maintained. We wouldn't have to narrow the median with this option, and parking is removed from both sides of the street, and our bike lanes stay at street level throughout the corridor. This will continue all the way to Taylor Street. Our next option, option 3, is very similar to option 2, but with option 3, we are looking at raised bike lanes, again removing parking and installing the raised bike lanes in place of the parking lane. So when we move over to our map view, We can see the raised bike lanes adjacent to the boulevard in place of the parking lane. And this will continue south to Taylor Street with our raised crosswalk shown again at Buena Vista Park. With this option, all of the median trees are also maintained and parking is removed. With the raised cycle track, cyclists will have to ramp down to street level at all of the side streets. And again, at all of the back lane crossings, there isn't space available for vehicles to make those turns with the raised cycle track at that sidewalk level. So cyclists would be ramping down at those points. Our fourth option, option 4, we looked at narrowing the median to make room for street level protected bike lanes and to maintain parking between 7th Street and Taylor Street. So once we move over to our map view, we'll see that parking has been removed for this first block between 8th Street and Taylor Street. With the existing turn lane, there just isn't space to maintain parking and narrow that median anymore to have parking on both sides of the street and the bike lane with this option.
Sorry, that was just to 7th Street, right, Carly?
Yes, just to 7th Street. As we continue south of 7th Street, we narrow the median so that the parking lane is maintained. We have the raised crosswalk at Buena Vista Park. And with this option, the dashed red line is showing where the existing median is, and the black line shows where the new median would be with this option. And with this option, the median is, with how much the median is narrowed, all of those trees would be removed. This option is at street level, so cyclists would stay at one level throughout the whole corridor. Continuing to Taylor Street. And then moving to our last option, option 5, we again narrowed the median to make room for a parking lane and looked at raised bike lanes throughout the corridor. So when we jump over to the map view, we again would have to remove parking between 8th Street and 7th Street with this option. And then south of 7th Street, looking at narrowing the median to make room for that parking lane and the bike lane. And we also have the raised crosswalk again at Buena Vista Park. With this option, all of the median trees would also be removed due to how narrow the median gets. And cyclists would have to be ramping up and down at the side streets and at those back lane and driveway crossings. So the red line is showing where the existing median is, and the black line showing where the new median would be with this option. So we will just jump back over to our PowerPoint. As that's just loading. So here we have a little bit about how we evaluated all of these designs. The full evaluation table was too large to fit into this PowerPoint, but it will be available in the final report. So here's just some highlights of the things we looked at when we evaluated these options. So we looked at whether or not parking was maintained, whether or not the median trees were maintained, if the bike lane was at street level, which would be a little more comfortable than the raised version for this section of Victoria with how much it has to ramp up and down. And we looked at how comfortable the transitions would be at either end at 8th Street and at Taylor Street. and some initial high-level cost estimates. So after we evaluated these designs, option 2, the street-level bike lanes without parking, scored the highest. They provide a comfortable AAA cycling facility. However, parking is removed throughout the corridor. The option that scored second highest was option 1, the bidirectional bike lanes on the west side of Victoria. So this option only removes parking from one side, and also all of those median trees would be maintained, but the transitions at 8th Street and at Taylor Street are not as comfortable as some of the other options. The option that scored third highest was option 4, the street level bike lanes without parking. So this option does maintain parking throughout the corridor, and again, it's at street level to be a little more comfortable. However, all of those median trees are removed. The option that scored fourth highest was option 3, the raised bike lanes without parking. So this option, again, removes parking throughout the corridor, and because it is raised, there would be a lot of ramping up and down as you are riding your bike, so it's not as comfortable as our street level options. And the option that scored the lowest was option number 5, the raised bike lanes with parking. So while this one does maintain parking, all of those median trees would be removed, and since it is raised, there would be a lot of ramp up and down with this option. So before we move into any questions, just go over some of the next steps for this project. So the comment period will be open until January 6th, 2021. For anyone that wasn't able to attend tonight's meeting, or if you have any questions after this meeting, I know it's a lot of information to digest. So you can send those comments in through your email, phone calls, the Engage page, and we will answer those questions. And we will also have a survey later on that we will be linking to where you can provide some comments and some thoughts on our design options. Once the comment period closes, we will be finalizing the recommended design option, and then we will present the Victoria Avenue Bikeway design and the public feedback summary to the Standing Policy Committee and to Council. So with that, I'm sure there's some questions for me to answer.
Yeah, I'm hoping people are typing away. I know it's a lot of information to absorb, and it might be hard to see depending on your screen how those designs look. So please submit your comments and we'll try to describe it the best we can. We've had one question submitted already. The first question is, can you please describe how option 1 will integrate well with the existing cycle track on Victoria? I'm assuming they mean north of 8th Street. So they're discussing that transition at 8th Street and Victoria Avenue.
Yeah, so we'll see, give Danae a minute to pull back to that intersection. So here you can see at 8th Street, we have the green paint noted on our drawing for a little bit about where cyclists would be crossing. So if you're traveling south towards Taylor Street, it would just be one crossing across 8th Street with that traffic signal. If you're going north towards the traffic bridge, that's where it would be a 2-stage crossing at 8th Street. Once you got to that corner of Victoria and 8th Street, you would then cross to the east side of Victoria and then again north over to the race cycle track. So this one, not as nice as the other options, because when you are going northbound, you have to do that cross 8th Street twice to get over there.
Okay, thanks, Carly. The next question is curious about how snow removal is taken care of in each option.
Yeah, it's a great question. So With snow removal, we do have equipment available that can clear all of our cycling facilities. So it's a smaller little device or tractor style thing that can move down all of those bike lanes. And there is some buffer space with our raised ones where that snow can be stored as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that we're planning to take a report to council at budget time to discuss operational implications of priority clearing for snow for those routes. So depending how council decides at budget time, we'll just determine the type of priority that they'll get for that snow clearing. All right, so the next question is, why don't we just move the bikes over to Melrose where there's lots of room? They could be routed through Buena Vista Park.
Yeah, that is something that we have heard. Victoria Avenue, it was identified in the AT plan as a all ages and abilities route. It also connects a lot better at both 8th Street and Taylor Street. So at 8th Street, we already have the raised cycle tracks and that traffic signal, which will help bikes move across. And then again at Taylor Street, we also have traffic signals, which makes it nice for cyclists to get across those busy intersections. Whereas Melrose does not have that, so it gets a little more tricky crossing Taylor Street. And when you have one street with bike lanes, it's a little easier to remember. Once you get onto Victoria, you know, there's going to be a comfortable AAA facility. You don't have to remember when you need to switch streets.
Yeah, we also have heard from people in our park space that that interaction with commuter cyclists can create some conflict for our pedestrians who are enjoying the park on a recreational basis. So that's just an additional item to consider if we're trying to route people through Buena Vista Park. The next question is, what type of median or barrier is used for option 2? The downtown bike lane bollards are unsightly. It would be nice to see something that looks better and can be maintained.
Yeah, so with option 2, we would be looking at some concrete curbing to separate cyclists from the driving lane.
So it would look like a short barrier, short concrete barrier. I'm just reading these in the order that they come, so we might have to go back and forth to options a little bit, Danae. Sorry about that. The next one is a comment. Bikeways without parking should not be an option. We pay very high taxes and a lot of houses do not have off-street parking options.
Thank you for that comment.
Yeah, that's why we're here to get your feedback. We knew parking was very important to the residents right along Victoria Avenue. So thanks for that feedback. I walked down Victoria Avenue from 8th Street to the bridge this winter, and some of the bike lanes are covered in snow. In winter, with all the snow we have, which narrows most streets, how do you plan on keeping the bike lanes cleared, especially if it is a raised bike lane? So I'm not sure if we answered that when we answered that snow clearing, that initial snow clearing option. I'm hoping that we answered that earlier. Should we repeat the answer just in case they missed it?
Sure. Yeah, so we are planning on taking a report forward at budget time, kind of looking at the snow clearing priorities for our bike lanes and how that can be improved and some of the impacts that would have to our budget.
Yeah, and I know the existing bike facility, there was some snow. It took them a bit of time to respond just because of the extent of the snow event that we had in November. Usually they try to respond more quickly, but they had such a massive event that they were focused on the priority 1 streets first. And it took them a bit of time to move on to the other priorities. How do these options fit into the extensive curb and median work that was done on Victoria this summer?
Yeah, so we are aware of the work that has taken place. Some of these, such as option 2, wouldn't affect any of that existing curb work. That curb work doesn't affect, or this option doesn't affect that curb that was done. Some of the other options that are more extensive, like 4 and 5, we would be looking at. With option 4 and 5, we are looking at narrowing that median so that curb work would be redone.
So we're just going to jump in here. I think Natalie, we might have lost Natalie. I don't know if anybody else is having some challenges to hear her. So I'm just going to jump in, moderating the Q&A here. Bear with me while I figure out where Natalie left off. So I'm just going to start at the top here. So apologies if it's not in order, but do all properties have access to an alley on Victoria where they can park if it is removed from the street?
Yes, I believe with all of these options there is back lanes throughout where everyone would have access to.
All right. Sorry, just reading them here. Victoria was just asphalted and had new curbs built in summer 2020, and now some of these options will involve removing some of the curbs that the city just spent a lot of money building. So I think that's a bit more of a comment. I think we've addressed, Carly's addressed that some of the options don't have any impact on that, but a few would, where we narrow the median. There would be some impact there. Question, can you comment on if raised crosswalks / bike lanes could be included on the sidewalk level bike lane options?
Yes, so with all of the options, the raised crosswalk would still be in place. How cyclists get over that raised crosswalk at 6th Street does vary if it's street level or raised. So with our street level bike lanes, cyclists would actually go over that raised crosswalk just like the vehicles would. But with the raised cycle track, or with the raised cycle tracks, they would actually stay at street level as they cross it on the west side. On the east side, there would still be that ramp at the corner, just like as if they were going up it.
Great, thanks, Carly. Another question. When is the soonest that this project can be funded and constructed?
So once we take our report to committee, we will then, and have our recommended design, we will then be looking at funding options, presenting that to council and looking at if there's any alternate funding sources available. Once we have funding secured, we would then be looking at construction.
Thanks, Carly. Another comment, it would be easier to build a bike lane through the park than on Victoria. I think we've answered that again already, but Carly, if you just wanted to touch, excuse me, briefly on the conflicts at parks and bike lanes.
Yeah, so because our parks are more of a recreational facility and we have a lot of people there just enjoying the park, that conflicts a little bit with some of our commuter cyclists that are traveling through the park to get to a destination. So we do try to separate our cyclists at that point. Constructing a separate path through the park would also be difficult since a lot of that space is already allocated.
Thanks, Danae. I'm back now. Sorry about that, folks. My internet dropped completely, so I'm glad Danae was able to cover for me for a bit. The next question is, how can you offer options without parking for homeowners? Where do you propose people park and plug in during the winter?
Yeah, so that is something that, we looked at providing multiple options to get feedback on, because we understand that parking is important. So there are options for parking off of your back lane if you have a garage where you can park. Some of the options do have parking on, or such as option 1, we're only removing parking on one side, so you might be able to park on the other side of Victoria. It's a little difficult if you need to plug in, and some of the side streets as well have some space for parking.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, it's part of our responsibility to consider all options and evaluate the impacts, and then present our option to council. So that's why we included them. At the NTR, there was a lot of opposition to losing parking to a Victoria bike lane, especially with houses fronting the street. Is a mixed option plan with some parking kept possible? So I think you just answered that, Carly, with option 1, maintains parking on the east side of the street, and that's the one that has some parking. We are in an infill area and losing parking is unacceptable as the side streets are full of parking already. Thanks for that comment. Seems like we're hearing that recurring theme tonight. Many residents from Victoria Avenue seem to be attending tonight, and that's great. We want to hear your feedback and your opinions on these options so that we can present your position to council. How are these networks being coordinated with other city projects? For example, Victoria south of Ruth is on the priority sidewalk list, and the road and median were totally redone this summer between 8th and Taylor.
Yeah, so we are aware of some of the other city projects. We do look at the asset preservation map for where they are working. The original timeline for this project was to have our second meeting, which we're having tonight, back in May, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our engagement timeline got pushed. So that also affected our ability to look at anything this summer.
As well as funding. We don't know which option is going to be recommended yet, so we don't know how much funding is needed, and we didn't know whether or not the median would need work to accommodate the option. Someone's asking how many houses would lose their on-street parking Do you have those numbers with you tonight, Carly?
I have the total parking spots. I do not have a count of the houses. So on the west side of Victoria, there are 64 parking spots that would be lost and 70 on the east side.
Didn't we miss the window for options 4 and 5 as new curbs were just completed along the median and curb? So I think you answered that when you answered that last question. Here's another comment. I don't think the city has a responsibility to provide parking for your private vehicle on the street at the expense of people's safety. There's many streets in the city where the city doesn't do this. I park off my back alley. So thanks for that comment. It's always great at these meetings to hear the balance of opinions and interests. If the median is narrowed as outlined in option 4 and 5, what becomes of the median? Is it just a narrow concrete median? Is it landscaped at all?
So with options 4 and 5, if one of those options was selected as the recommended design, once we move into the detailed design phase, we would look at if there's any options for some vegetation or green space in that area. Maybe not a tree, but maybe if there's something smaller, or it might be hardscaped.
Okay. How did the ranking of the options come about? I basically agree with the order of them, but curious how that decision was made.
I'll just give Danae a minute to pull up our little simplified evaluation table. So we looked at a few different things, one of them being the impacts to parking, since we know that is important, and also the median trees. So knowing that those are two very important things for this corridor. The options got points if parking was maintained or if those median trees were maintained. We also looked at the comfort of the facility. So those options that are at street level. We also looked at some of the different driveway crossings and street crossings. So option 1, because it is on one side of the street, some of those conflicts are a little less since you're only dealing with vehicles turning one way. And those are some of the factors and just kind of the overall impact to the street.
Okay, so it looks like we're back to a couple parking questions. Where would we park, seeing as the side streets are already very congested? When Victoria is being cleared, we have to walk a long distance to park. Will that be how it always is without parking? So yes, I think the intent would be that you would park on the side street or in your back alley if you have some parking back off there for those options. Option 2 is much cheaper and provides a safety. I don't think it's worth to spend millions more just to accommodate street parking when everyone has access to private parking off the alley and side streets. And then one question, are there any driveways facing Victoria? How would they be integrated, in particular with the raised lanes option or options?
Yeah, so there are a few private driveways along Victoria, about one or so each block on each side of the street. With these options, a lot of those driveways are close to the back lane. So the raised cycle track would ramp down for those driveways and stay at street level across the back lanes before ramping back up. So it would still be that one ramp down and back up. It wouldn't be twice within one block.
Do you have on hand the number of driveways there are, Carly?
I don't believe I have that number. I have some other numbers. I don't think I have that one.
Yeah, it's not many though. It's like less than 10, right?
Yeah.
If I recall. So someone's responding to that back alley parking comment. We face Victoria and the alley has a power pole and gas meter that would have to be removed for access. Will the city pay for this so we can have a parking option? And as far as I know, the city does not pay to relocate utilities and back lanes to accommodate access to properties, as far as I know from my time at the city. The next one's a comment. This is a great initiative, some challenges, but very important for active transportation in our city. We agree. I'm surprised the city is considering spending $1 million or more for 8 blocks of bike lanes and removes parking spaces. The city keeps growing and 99.999% of the population drive vehicles. Spending $1 million for 8 blocks of bike lane for 0.001% of the population seems excessive. Most people ride bikes for only 5 months of the year. So thanks for that comment. I'm not too sure if those stats are fully accurate on the number of people that cycle year round. I don't have those numbers with me, but we see this as a safety initiative that is very important for our active transportation network. And we feel it's worth the investment to get a completed cycling network in our city. Was there any consideration of running a bike lane along 7th Street, along the park to Melrose?
Yeah, so 7th Street is a bit of a narrow street, so it would be tricky to fit a bike lane in there as well. And also with our active transportation network, we want a complete connected network. If we are diverting cyclists to side streets, then there's less chance that they're going to want to make that movement over or even know that it exists. So by having one street that is designated as an active transportation street makes it a little easier to know that once you get there, you have a facility. And because, you know, bikes are human powered, it might not seem like a far jog over in your car, but when you're riding a bike, that is quite a bit longer to do.
So to follow up, someone's asking about option 6 that keeps parking in front of the front-facing houses, but not in front of the flankage houses. So thanks for that feedback on your preferred option. We'll make sure that makes it to the project file. Can you walk us through how the final report would be presented to council? There's quite a bit of opposition to losing parking, while the highest ranked option doesn't have any. Is this something that would be addressed prior to submitting the report?
So this is something that we will be presenting in our final report to council. We will provide a bit of the background on the engineering and the technical evaluation for these options, as well as a summary on the public input and all of your comments on which options that you prefer.
Would median removing options also bury the center power line down Victoria Avenue? And if the median trees are removed, would they be replaced elsewhere in the neighborhood?
So for the power line, I have contacted our Saskatoon Light and Power, and that power line would stay where it is. Narrowing the median does not affect that. There would be enough space for those poles to remain. And if option 4 or 5 was selected and those trees would have to be removed, we would look into more details on those trees to see if there would be an option for them to be replanted before we just remove them. So we would see if there was a way for them to be saved in maybe another neighborhood or another area.
I'm very much in favor of bike lanes, but I don't think any option which eliminates parking in this manner is going to fly politically. Thanks for that comment. You said 4,000 vehicles drive daily on Victoria Avenue. For safety concerns, shouldn't a bikeway on Melrose or East Lake be a lot safer?
So with the current traffic volumes and without a facility on Victoria, Melrose is the quieter street. So we are looking at making an investment to Victoria so that it can be comfortable with the current traffic volumes.
In my opinion, if this cannot be done while maintaining on-street parking, this would not be a successful outcome. We're hearing from many of you how important parking is for you on this corridor. Another comment, great initiative. Thank you for bringing this to our community. Having less people drive is a good thing, and providing safe cycling infrastructure will only assist with this. Definitely like all of the options. I can tell a lot of effort has been put into it. I'm just concerned that it's not just the lack of parking for homeowners, it's also about guests, drop-offs, delivery, etc. To only have a back lane to accommodate this would be a challenge. Fair point. The bike lanes north of 8th Street are not being used by all cyclists. Some are still cycling in the street and slowing down traffic. If new bikeways are created all the way to Taylor, should cyclists not be mandated to use them to free up the street for vehicles? Danae, did you want to talk about the new bike bylaw? Or can you unmute?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, so thanks, Natalie. With the new bicycle bylaw that was adopted this year, cyclists are not required to cycle in a specific cycling facility, even if it is provided. Providing options for people on bikes is important because there are various skill levels available. So some folks may be traveling at faster speeds, closer to the speeds that are on Victoria, and may be more comfortable cycling in that travel lane. Whereas with an all ages and abilities network, we're really trying to provide a facility that's comfortable for those who may not be comfortable cycling in the road at those higher traffic speeds. And so having the option for cyclists does help improve their overall ability to get through our network.
Okay, thanks, Danae. Is it a foregone conclusion that these bike lanes are going to happen? I do not see not moving forward with this proposal as an option.
So we have been directed to come up with a all ages and abilities cycling facility on Victoria Avenue. So that is what we have looked at, and we've developed a few different options that would provide that AAA facility on Victoria, as was recommended through the AT plan.
There's another question for Danae. Sass Crescent from 8th to Taylor is a AAA cycle facility, but all sharrows have faded away and there is essentially no cycle infrastructure left. Are there any plans to maintain the bike lane on this street? Crescent from 8th to Taylor.
Thanks for the shout out, the specific shout out. I have to admit, I'm gonna have to look at a map here. My brain is not in map mode. It's in moderating mode. So sorry, Saskatchewan Crescent from 8th to Taylor.
From 8th to Taylor.
So we're talking about in here.
So
yeah, so I believe what you're referring to, and please in the comments correct me if I'm wrong in my assumption, is that Sass Crescent West is signed as a bike route. And so I believe in our cycling guide, it probably comes up as an option for that's a lower volume street that may be more comfortable for people cycling on that street. I don't know if there were sharrows. I don't think there have been sharrows on Sask Crescent in the past, to my knowledge, although please do correct me if I'm wrong. But yes, it is signed as a bike route and as part of our cycling network. There are a number of streets in the city. If you've traveled around and you have an eagle eye, you can spot those little green and white bikeway or bike signs. And Sass Crescent does have a few of those.
thanks for that, Danae. Yeah, I wasn't sure on that answer. I was thinking Victoria too, so I didn't have that ready. So thanks. An adjustment for those fronting Victoria, but cities need to look with a longer lens, and this will move our city in the right direction in terms of mobility options, safety, accessibility, and sustainability. Be bold. Parking will sort itself out. I would gladly give up the parking space in front of my house for active transportation. Thanks for volunteering. I'm not sure if we can get all the neighbors to agree to that, but thanks for providing the insights on where you want the vision of the city to go. Thanks. So another comment about going down 7th to Melrose, that it would be safer and less expensive. Another comment, I bike 7 months of the year. I always ride down Eastlake or Melrose as they are both very quiet traffic-wise. Many other bikers will tell you the same thing. Usage of current bikers should speak volumes. No parking by my house is a safety concern for me and my small children. Trying to get them in and out of a vehicle that is a few blocks away increases risk of them being exposed to traffic. Thanks for that feedback. Parking next to the bike lane. Will be there enough room with the curb so car doors don't swing open in front of bikes? Do you want to talk a little bit about the buffer space on the different options, Carly?
Yeah, so with all of the options, we did look at the width of that buffer space, and especially with options 4 and 5, since they are next to a parking lane to make sure that buffer space is wide enough so that a car door is not going to open up into the bike lane. So the options do have some different widths between them, and all of the options where they are next to a parking lane is a little bit wider to make sure that there is space for those car doors.
Okay. So I think going back to whether cyclists can ride on the sidewalk. Someone is saying, can cyclists ride on the sidewalk even if bike lanes are available? So I think that's going back to that updated bike bylaw, Danae. I believe you were referring to on-street versus protected facility, and now they're asking about sidewalk.
Yeah, so another change to the bicycle bylaw this year was to permit children 13 and under to be able to ride on the sidewalk, but it still does remain illegal for cyclists over the age of 13, so 14 and over, to ride on the sidewalk. And just while we're on the topic of bylaws, I will add a clarification because I'm not sure if it was completely clear. But under provincial legislation, bicycles are considered vehicles, and so they are allowed to ride in the travel lane on streets where they're permitted.
Okay. Option 5 is most closely to what already exists on Victoria, north of 8th Street. Why doesn't this rank higher if that was the design choice made for that phase? Wouldn't this be the best for consistency?
Yeah, so option 5, it would match what we have north of 8th Street. However, there's a few differences between Victoria north of 8th Street before those raised cycle track went in and this section of Victoria. And the big difference is that north of 8th Street, a lot of the really old mature trees were in the center median, and there wasn't much of any trees in the boulevard next to the sidewalk. Where this section of 8th Street, that's flipped. So all of the really mature trees are right next to the sidewalk, and the younger trees are in the median. So for this section of Victoria, for that raised cycle track, you would have the sidewalk, the really old mature trees, and then the raised cycle track gets pushed closer out to the parking lane. And this is what requires us to have to ramp up and down at all of those driveways. So when the raised cycle track is able to be closer to the sidewalk, it's easier to maintain the grade of that cycle track, where that wouldn't be an option with this one. So it really affected the comfort. So what was comfortable north of 8th Street would just be less comfortable here. And one comment we have heard from some of our more confident cyclists in the city is that north of 8th Street, those race cycle tracks, they do ramp up and down quite a bit already. There is a little bit of range in our cyclists and what they find comfortable as well.
Okay. Then we have some feedback here. I agree with the decision not to put any bike lanes through Buena Vista Park. And another comment, if this has to move forward, I would hope that the option chosen would not require the new curbs and asphalt just put in to be destroyed. I'm sure the cost for this was very expensive. So thanks for that. Yeah, some of our options maintain those curbs, as Carly mentioned earlier. So you would prioritize those because of that. I think this might have been answered when I was offline, but the question is there any dedicated funding for this project? Is that covered already?
Yeah, we did address that, but I can answer that again. So once the comment period has closed for this project, we will be finalizing our recommendations and presenting our recommendations as well as all of your comments to council. And once we have our final option from that, we will look into our detailed design and funding sources for this.
So there's a couple more here related to parking. So one was, is it not the case that every house that fronts Victoria Avenue has back alley access and potential garage parking? And then the flip to that comment that someone else posed was, what do you propose if a garage is not an option for someone? So I think we've covered some of that discussion already. And then a follow-up to Sass Crescent, Danae. It's marked as shared use on-road cycling on the cycling guide. Someone hold that up for us.
Thanks for looking that up.
And then a question. There's often blind corners with fences for cars leading the alleys, and it can be dangerous for pedestrians and also cyclists. Will any of these designs incorporate measures to make these alley crossings safer?
Yeah, so with these designs and having the bike lane kind of in the street where the parking lane currently is, that does push cyclists a little further out to help provide a bit more visibility for people leaving those back lanes so that they can see them before they are there. So there's a little more free space in the boulevard so that it's not blocking those bike lanes.
Have the planners already made up their minds on the option? Will our opinions and concerns really be considered? Will Melrose and Eastlake actually be considered as alternative bike routes?
So we will be compiling all of your feedback to be presented to council, all of your comments. And we are here to hear. We have developed some options, again, some that remove parking, but we know that's important, which was why we looked at options that could also maintain parking and kind of present you with all of the options instead of developing them and cutting them based on our own thoughts. We also want to hear from you what is important for your street.
Yeah, and I think related to the Eastlake and Melrose comment, we don't want to prevent cycling on those routes. We want to provide safe cycling on Victoria. So that's why we're talking about Victoria. Cyclists are still welcome to use Eastlake and Melrose, but Victoria has that connectivity, as Carly mentioned earlier, over to the downtown and further north, all the way to 33rd Street multi-use path. It's the most direct route, and that's why it was recommended in the Active Transportation Master Plan. So another comment related to those up and down on Victoria North. So the ramps up and down are jarring on the existing cycle track. If that design is chosen here, it would not be good to see a smoother ride. It would be good to see a smoother ride, sorry. Could the intersecting streets also be raised to allow this? And the raised crosswalks are safer for pedestrians too. So I think they're asking if there can be raised crosswalks on the cross streets.
Yeah, so that's something that to add the raised crosswalks through the side streets, it would create a lot of challenges for drainage on the street since a lot of our streets do drain to those corners. And it would also increase the costs quite a bit to address the drainage and to raise those crossings. So it wasn't something that we looked at.
Have the residences on Victoria been polled for their specific input?
So we sent the flyer for this project to everyone along Victoria, all of those residences within 150 meters. We did not ask for a specific poll, but we did notify them of this event and our first round of engagement in March.
Yeah, there was also a mini billboard in the corridor, I believe, as well, right, Carly?
Yes, there was a mini billboard placed on Buena Vista Park along Victoria.
I realized that people said that trees are important, but the easiest option, which is not listed, is to just continue what was done on Victoria between 8th Street and the bridge. Take the grass boulevard next to the sidewalk between 8th and Taylor and put the bike lane there. Plant trees in the center boulevard to replace the trees lost that were next to the sidewalk. I see Danae's taking us down to Street View. That's good. You can kind of see what they mean.
If it'll load.
Yeah, so through this section of Victoria, there are a lot of very old, 100-year-old elm trees adjacent to the sidewalk that would be very difficult and expensive to remove. There's also some power poles on the west side of Victoria in that boulevard space in the few blocks where there aren't trees, which would create additional issues with trying to put a raised cycle track through that section. So with that, we looked at the younger trees being in the median, and we thought it would be easier to possibly replant some of those trees if they were removed from Victoria.
Okay. How many cyclists are currently biking on Victoria? Is this guaranteed to increase with Bikeway enough in regards to the expense of it?
So one of our goals of the active transportation plan is to create a complete and connected cycling network throughout Saskatoon. So the current volumes of cyclists aren't always a great indicator of a future demand once we have a facility in place, not just on Victoria, but also access to some additional destinations. And as we continue to build our network, it'll be easier to get to different places by bike, and we can see cyclist volumes increase throughout Saskatoon, not just through this stretch.
So we're back to the trees comment. There's a couple opposing opinions and views that came in. So one comment is, it's my understanding that most of the trees near the sidewalks do not meet current urban forestry standards and will not be replaced in the future. With that in mind, did you consider an option that removes the trees near the sidewalks and build a raised cycle track in their place? The rest of the street could remain as is. And then the follow-up comment from someone else was, please do not remove mature trees on the boulevard. I think you had addressed that already, Carly, as to why we didn't look at removing those. And another general comment, I much prefer Victoria to Melrose or Eastlake for cycling. Cycling infrastructure should be convenient and integrate well with other cycling infrastructure. There's also not easy crossings of 8th Street at those intersections. Victoria makes much more sense for actually building this for cyclists. And one comment said, we did not get a flyer. The first we heard of this was the sign up in the park. So I'm not sure where they live, but I know I've had issues with some of my other neighborhood traffic reviews where some residents have missed a flyer, and sometimes if they have a no junk mail or if they've opted out of a list through Canada Post, they might not be receiving our flyers and not realize that they're not getting those. So that's, I don't know if that's the circumstance in this case, but that might be a reason why that house got missed. Although the city does not pay for moving utility poles in the alley, I would hope some considerations for this would be given to providing some type of assistance with this, maybe even a tax break or something like this. So I think this was related to accessing parking off the back lane. And if we remove parking from the street to facilitate them having parking at the back. I think a connected AAA system is excellent. I live on 6th Street, half a block off Victoria, and would essentially use it daily, all year round, to commute to and from work and for leisure. I agree with the comments about the race cycle track on Victoria North. It is jarring going up and down. So really favor all options with street level protected bike lanes. I agree with the rankings that you came up with in terms of my preferences. So 2, 1, 4, 3, 5. Thank you, John. I was not able to join from the beginning. Will this meeting be recorded and posted online? Is there another place to find the information to submit feedback? So that might be a good place for me to post the Engage page link and the survey link into the chat.
Yeah, so this meeting is being recorded and we will have it posted to our Engage page within the next few days. And then there is more information on the Engage page as well. We have a little infographic with all of the design options that you can see, as well as a survey where you can submit your comments on the options that you like and you don't like. And I also have some contact information if you want to email me directly or phone me. That information is all on the Engage page.
And I did manage to get that into the chat there. So it's a live link. People can click on that and they'll know how to find the information. Do you know what cyclists' experience is of riding towards traffic as an option 1, especially as many drivers speed along Victoria? Thank you. So related to the bidirectional, if you're heading north and traffic's coming at you on your right-hand side, how that experience is.
Yeah, that is something that we also looked at. We don't have any bidirectional bike lanes in Saskatoon at the moment. It isn't as common of a facility as bike lanes on either side of the street because it is sometimes not as comfortable driving towards traffic, and sometimes traffic isn't necessarily expecting you to be biking in that direction. So that was another reason why option 2 didn't score as high as option 1.
Option 1 didn't score as high as option 2, like this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, option 2, the bidirectional bike lanes, didn't score as high as option 1, the street level bike lanes.
After all the infrastructure being done on Victoria this summer, wouldn't it be more cost effective to use Melrose or Eastlake? I think we talked about that in terms of the overall connectivity of the network. Is there a way to sign up for future sessions on this so we don't have to rely on a flyer or bulletin board? So I think we have that a little bit later in the presentation on how you can sign up for updates. And then the question was just a clarification on the flyer delivery. Was it not delivered to all residents living in the affected area?
Yeah, so it was, our delivery area was Victoria Avenue, and everyone within 150 meters of Victoria was our flyer delivery area. And then we also used a few other methods to try and reach out to people that were maybe affected by this project, but not in the flyer delivery area. So as we've mentioned, we had a mini billboard placed in or on Buena Vista Park along Victoria for people that might be driving through the corridor or walking through the corridor. We reached out to the Buena Vista Community Association to share with their members. And then anyone that had subscribed for updates through the previous rounds of engagement, we also sent an email out. We reached out to a few different groups as well, such as Saskatoon Cycles, to try and spread the word of this project in a few different ways, since we know people hear about these projects in different ways.
And then another comment, I would think that if on-street parking isn't going to be available, that the city would need to provide snow clearing or removal in the alleys that people would be forced to use. So thanks for that comment. I'm not too sure how the snow clearing priority is in the back lanes. I believe they're cleared if you have waste pickup in the back lanes, but we'd have to check with our colleagues at Roadways and Operations to clarify that. And another comment, I have found that the signage related to bike lanes at intersections is often hard to understand by motorists, which can present a hazard in their opinion. So I'm not sure if you wanted to address that, Carly, but the design at the intersections to transition at 8th Street and Taylor Street will be developed during the detailed design once this facility type is selected. So we don't have the details on how these will be signed at this point, but we'll follow national standards and best practices to hopefully clarify that for motorists on how they should be interacting with the cyclists at those transition points. And a question about the community association. Has the Buena Vista Community Association taken a position on this?
Yeah, we did reach out to them and they sent some of their comments back to me on their thoughts on some of the different priorities for the street.
Okay, great. It's good that they've reached out with their thoughts. And a question, and I don't know if you'll have the answer, Carly, but do any people advocating for this actually live on Victoria Avenue?
Yeah, I don't have that answer. Since I know everyone has joined anonymously, we don't have that list of where people live and their thoughts that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's possible that we've heard from people living directly on Victoria advocating for it, but we don't cross-reference their address with their comments, so we can't clarify that for you. And I believe this is someone from the Community Association that says they submitted an idea similar to option 5. And then they're asking how many are participating in this session. So it fluctuates throughout the meeting depending when people join or sign off. We have 16 signed on right now, and I believe we were up to, it was about 20, I think, at the peak of the meeting. And then one comment about bidirectional facilities. Having ridden bidirectional in other cities, I can say that it's weird at first, but cyclists and drivers get used to it. The challenge in this scenario is the intersection at 8th Street. The designed configuration is not desirable nor convenient. Right.
Yep, and that's something we would look at in a bit more detail. If the bidirectional facility was recommended, we'd look at how to maybe make that a bit more comfortable in the next phase.
And another response from the Buena Vista Community Association, I believe. The Community Association takes no hard position, but has raised issues about the project and works to ensure residents have the ability to participate in the decision-making process. So they won't speak on your behalf, but they'll make sure that you have that opportunity to participate. If bikes are considered vehicles and can still ride on the street, even if a bikeway exists, why can't the speed be reduced so that no parking is lost? So that's a nice segue to another project that we have on the go. We're currently undertaking a residential speed limit review. This was requested by City Council. I believe it was about a little over a year ago, and we're undertaking a speed limit review for residential streets, which includes potentially lowering the posted speed limit, adjusting posted speed limits around high schools, potentially introducing reduced speed limits for playground zones, and potentially establishing reduced speed limits in areas with a high concentration of seniors. And we're working on this right now, and we anticipate that this work will be presented to Council in 2021. And we'll also be doing some engagement around that project. So I think, as Carly alluded to earlier, though, a posted speed limit reduction wouldn't be enough to make Victoria comfortable because the volumes are still quite high. So if we wanted to maintain parking and not provide a cycling facility, we'd have to look at some very drastic directional closures or something to get those volumes down to a comfortable level. And we didn't think that would be acceptable to the community, so we didn't go that route. And then another comment, kids 12 and under could ride on existing and updated sidewalks. So I'm not too sure if that's related to the last comment where you don't need a facility, just reduce the speed limit and have kids ride on sidewalks, I think is maybe. They were both submitted by anonymous, so I'm not sure if that's the same person. And then another question, will a proposed option for Melrose and Eastlake be presented to Council?
So when this report goes forward, we will be sure to include that we've heard comments for Eastlake and Melrose in that report in our summary of the public input. And having a AAA facility on Victoria, it wouldn't prevent cyclists from using either of those streets. That would still be a viable option.
What about local traffic only? We could keep our parking then.
Yeah, so to have local traffic only, we would still need to look at ways to enforce that. I don't know if a sign would be enough. People would still likely drive along Victoria if that is the street that's getting them through to their destination. So we would still need some different directional closures to help with that.
And then somebody's asking, did you share when the decision would be made and when the chosen option would be completed? So I think you had some rough timelines in your next step slide.
Yeah, looking at spring 2021 would be when we would take this report forward, and we'll provide details on how you can subscribe for updates, and we will be sending out an email to that email list once we know when that project is on the agenda, so that you can tune in to that meeting.
It looks like some of the comments are slowing down. So did you want to, go over that, how they can subscribe for updates?
Yeah, so one of the ways you can subscribe for updates is if you go through the survey link that we have posted in the Q&A. That survey will ask you if you would like to subscribe for updates, and you can provide your information in there. The link to that survey is also available on the Engage page, and you can subscribe through the Engage page. So some of the other ways you can send us your comments or questions after tonight. You can post them directly on our Engage page at saskatoon.ca/engage. And then the Neighborhood Bikeways, you can search there, or it might be one of the options right at the top. And so there's also my contact information on the screen there, and it's available on the Engage page as well. So you can email or call me directly with your comments and questions, and they will all be recorded and added to the project file. And you can also send me a letter if you would prefer to send your options in that way.
Thanks, Carly. Looks like there's another comment that came in here, so I'm just checking. I'll comment on closing the meeting. We want parking. We heard that loud and clear from many of you tonight, so thanks for providing your feedback and your thoughts on the design options, and we'll make sure to assemble all of that when we present the options to council. Okay. So as Carly mentioned, we'd like to get your opinion. If you weren't able to provide all of your thoughts tonight, please submit a survey form. So I've published that in the chat, and we would like your feedback on the design options as well as how we did tonight. If you'd like to be kept up to date on the project, please subscribe for email updates. And Carly mentioned in her last slide how to do that. And you've got lots of time to think these over and look at them on the Engage page and provide your feedbacks before January 6th. Feel free to reach out to us with your comments and questions till then. We also encourage you to share this information with your neighbors so that they also have an opportunity to participate. Particularly if some of you aren't getting the flyers, it'd be great if you can spread the word with them. I'm just going to check the comment box one more time to make sure there's nothing new. Just a couple thanks from attendees, so thank you very much. We appreciate you all taking the time to join us tonight. The meeting recording will be posted to the Engage page in the next few days. It does take us a bit of time to finish up the transcript so that the closed captioning can work with the video. So just give us a few days to get that together. And we look forward to hearing from you and working with you on this very important project. So on behalf of Danae, Carly, and myself, I'd like to thank you all for participating in the Neighborhood Bikeways project. And we hope that you have a very safe and healthy and happy holiday season.